Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Sweet House. I am sitting down with an award-winning filmmaker and an awesome storyteller. That's what drafted me to ask him to come sit down in the hot seat in The Sweet House because he creates some of the best content that's advocating for Black culture, but also very thorough in explanation. So I really enjoyed watching his videos for a long time, and I reached out to him. So here's Garrison Hayes, you guys. He is in the house.
I'm in the house. Thank you so much for having me.
And we just found out we live in the same part of the town. So, but yeah, and we just had some similar upbringing conversations and all that. But Garrison is, like I said, a phenomenal storyteller, and I know he is not going to be a stranger to any of these hard questions. Do you get nervous ever when you're doing this?
I'm always nervous.
Really?
It's not good.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous, but I'm fine. I don't feel like it stops me, but like there's always like a little bit of like nervousness. Like,
I feel like it's a good thing though.
I agree with you.
I had the CEO of Style Blueprint on last week, and she said she's always nervous until she hits up there.
Yep.
And then she said she just goes.
Yep.
So when you're creating your content, do you also get nervous then? I feel like your content is so strategic. I mean, you're pulling like photos and videos and facts. And how do you put all this together with all the nerves? I feel like I would be afraid that I mispronounced somebody's name or got some historical fact wrong. Like, how do you go about navigating that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very scripted. So for what I do, I write a script. And so I'm able to fact check the script, make sure everything in the script is like factual as far as I know. I try to find someone saying their name or someone else saying the name so I know I'm saying it right. So for the most part, I feel comfortable. I feel like I have gone through the necessary steps to ensure that I'm doing what's right. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of social media trolls coming for your content?
Of course.
And how do you deal with it? Because I was having this conversation with one of my influencer friends yesterday.
Yeah.
She was saying that a lot of big TikTokers that she followed have just deleted their accounts because they just can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel like you would step away from it? When you get the trolls coming?
It's kind of interesting. So I've been making videos on the internet since 2006. And so I feel like I have seen every iteration of internet hater and troll possible. I've seen them all. I know what they're going to say. If I talk about race and the problem of racism in the world, they're going to say, I'm the real racist for even talking about race, right? Like I'm the problem. If I know what they're going to say. And so I do get them. And I won't lie, there are times where what they say bothers me. But for the most part, I've been able to do the kind of mental work of unraveling their little argument against me and kind of coming up with my kind of counter arguments to the point where I don't even have to respond, right? And so you kind of doing this work, you get a thick skin. I was actually just sharing with a friend who's going through this right now. That this is kind of a pivotal moment for her as a creator, right? Like you can decide this isn't worth it. These people are crazy. I don't want to deal with this. Or you can say, no, the message and the reason why I'm doing this is greater than the pushback and the criticism that I'm receiving. And both of those pathways are legitimate. Like I want to make it abundantly clear that you can say, yeah, my mental health is actually more important than any of this stuff. Or you can say my message and what I'm trying to accomplish is more important than what other people have to say. But you do have to make that decision. And you'll make that decision a dozen times a year, And so while today I say, no, I would never give up making videos on the internet. I've done it for so long. I love it. Maybe in 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, I'll look back and say, hey, it ain't worth it.
So you went to school for filmmaking.
That's right.
But then you ended up in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard that as a traditional scenario.
Yeah.
And so what made you want to get in front of the camera? Was it because you had these burning messages to share with people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I still do a lot behind the camera. But like I said, I mean, I'm coming up on almost 20 years of being in front of the camera, making videos where I'm talking to camera and posting my thoughts on whatever it is on the internet. It's kind of insane to think, but like for the last 18 years, that's been a part of my life. And so going to film school to be a filmmaker and be behind the camera, I do that. I get to do that through my agency and all kinds of things. But it's a part of who I am in a way. It's kind of like almost a definition.
I think you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to school for broadcast journalism and I don't think people should have to go to school for it.
Yeah.
I feel like either you have the passion or you don't. And even with filmmaking, do you feel like school actually taught you the techniques, or do you feel like you just started tinkering around and playing and creating your own masterpieces? Like, which way was the best way for you to start producing the kind of content that you wanted to produce?
It's a good question. And I have a lot of parents who talk to me about this. Like, so many kids want to go off to film school or journalism, broadcast, whatever it is. And they come to me and say, Garrison, can you talk them out of it? Can you just tell them don't do it? It's a lot of money. It's a lot of debt. Like,
and the return on investment.
It might not be that great.
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is, like, I kind of talk through it with them. And I often say, actually, like, maybe it might be best. One, the connections, like the network that you build is important. The socialization, becoming an adult away from home typically is really actually very important for your own development.
Yeah.
Kind of getting that ability to go out there and do it yourself. Very, very important. And then, like, from the film school perspective, there are parameters that the program puts in place. Like, you have to turn in this kind of assignment using this rubric or these kind of requirements. And those constraints, I actually think, unlock something within your creativity. And so it's not for everybody. And I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I don't think it's a bad thing. And so I felt like I learned a lot, especially the technical elements around camera, lighting, theory, storytelling theory, lighting theory. Like, those ideas I probably would not have pursued on my own from an academic perspective. I may have learned them intuitively, but I would not have been able to describe them. And I find that to be kind of important, especially in a collaborative setting where now I can describe, I want a high key set with like 2 key lights, right? And I need a little bit of a wrap. So can you light the thing behind me? So I can use the language to describe to someone else what I'm going for. And I find that to be invaluable.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I often have the discussion on this show of should you go to college or should you not go to college, because the show is all about people sharing their journeys, their nonlinear journeys, because no one's path is straightforward to where they are today. And so in order to inspire people, that's why I ask people to come to the Sweet House. So if you could say college or no college, because this new generation is contemplating it a bit more than we did. For us, it was just our next step of life. For them, they're asking themselves, is it worth it financially? Is it worth it intuitively, like you said? So college or no college if you were 17, 18 years old today?
If I were 17 or 18 today, that's a good question.
See, I told you I was going to light him up.
I
He
know.
is in the hot seat.
I'm not ready for that. I would probably say college, but I would pull a page out of Anthony O'Neill's book and say, like, go apply for every scholarship and grant possible. I would say focus on the PSAT because that's what qualifies you for the National Merit Scholarship. So, like, do well on the PSAT.
Did they push that in Atlanta where you grew up?
No.
Was it ACT? Yeah, same in Tennessee.
Yeah.
We did not take the SAT. We took ACT.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a northern thing.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things in the North that they know way better than we do for reasons.
Well, maybe we should enlighten ourselves. So y'all go do some more research on that. And I'll have you back for another episode so we can talk about just education.
That'd be fun.
I didn't realize you have been on your content creation journey since 2006. So kudos to you. I always give everyone their flowers when they come to the Sweet House. And I think it's awesome. And it actually speaks to the fact that your work is so well done. And so because it actually takes years to hone this kind of craft. It's not like you just wake up today and start creating content, which is what our social media economy has perpetuated that it's an overnight success if you create one video in your bathroom and it's viral.
That's right.
And that's generally not how you create the best content that reaches audiences.
That's right.
And so when I look at your trajectory from 2006 over, and this is like a couple decades now, you have seen a lot of different changes. And so have I. Like, I've been doing this since 2010 when I decided I was not going into the broadcast journalism route, and I went the more marketing, and we were known as bloggers before influencers.
Yeah.
And so your journey into content creation began years ago, but in 2020 you had this extra spark. Can you talk about what that looked like? Because a lot was happening for all of us when the world shut down. And was that when your content like really blew up, or had you already like peaked or climaxed before all of that?
No. So in 2020, so the interesting thing is, like, I started in 2006, I grew my YouTube channel, and then I went off to college and I kind of gave up on it. Like, I went off to college to study film, and I was going to kind of do that. And in the process of my college journey, I got more involved in like campus ministries and like student like leadership. And I found myself going on a totally different pathway. I ended up being a chaplain for a university, and then going off to seminary, and then being a pastor. And so like, it's a totally different trajectory.
You have such an interesting background. I hope you guys are taking note of that, because it takes a few tries and a few different things to figure it all out.
One of the number one questions that people kind of approach me with as a content creator is like, you know, how can I like be more natural when I talk to the camera? It's like, well, it just takes time.
It does.
It takes a lot of time. And you have to kind of like do it. So I've been doing it for a long time.
And at first it's really weird.
It's always really weird with almost anything. Some things come naturally, but it's perfecting it takes time. But anyway, that said, I was a pastor, and then 2020 hit, and the whole world is talking about this thing that I've been talking about, thinking about, and even preaching about, which was race, racism, class, like the ways in which our world is set up. And how we can hopefully build a better future. And I felt that a lot of what was missing from the conversation was some of the stuff that I'd learned from the books that I held near and dear. And so January 2021, 6 months, past the major uprising across the globe, I said, okay, I'm going to get online and start making videos about the books that I'm reading. And it was that moment. My first video, it was crazy. It did like 100 and something thousand views. And I was just like, that's insane. I don't even understand how did that happen? I had no followers on TikTok at the time. I think I had 12, and I posted the video and it did really, really well. It took off. And it just kind of created a spark that like, oh yeah, I did do this. I used to make videos, and I could do it again.
Yeah. Well, I love that you got your reinvigoration essentially to keep going, because with content creation, to all of my content creators out there, it is so easy to wake up one morning and get tied up in the algorithms and decide today is not today. And today is the day, because we're all essentially playing the lottery. And that's how I describe it to people. We're playing the social media lottery when we post content. Some of it does well, some of it does not. If it shows 2 people, to me, it's been a success, because you're still able to get your message out there. And then, like you said, as time goes on, things continue to get better, and you continue to get better with your craft of being a content creator. I want to know what made you transition from being a pastor to a full-time content creator, because those are 2 different contrasts. And I've actually had a really interesting conversation that I'm not going to talk about on camera, but I have a friend who she is very in tune with the church, and the church has kind of been, how do we put this? I'm trying not to like say her exact situation without people trying to figure out who she is. But anyways, she's very in tune with the church, and the church has kind of been condemning a lot of the things that she posts on social media. And so to see you, I actually told her about you when we were having this conversation last week. And I was like, well, I don't know much about his backstory from pastor to content creator, but I would be curious to hear more about what that transition looked like. And did you see Dancing with the Devil on TikTok?
No.
I mean, on Netflix?
No, I didn't.
So there are these TikTokers who joined a Christian cult in LA, and essentially they were also promised brand deals, and they did get brand deals. Somehow the church was tied to like an agency, and they were getting major brand deals. If you guys haven't seen it, you should go watch Dancing with the Devil.
I am definitely about to go watch that. That's insane. Okay.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Okay.
But very interesting because it still covers those two different ranges of content creation and religion. And so with so much information being on social media, there is a lot of condemnation and just really dissecting people. And so I'm wondering what made you transition from pastor to content creator, or were you still creating content while you were a pastor?
So yes, so when the pandemic like really hit and we shut down my church in March of 2020, March 2020, right? Yeah, March 2020.
March 15th, 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So when we shut down the church, and I immediately pivoted to making devotional videos for my congregation. So I would set up a camera and I'd film a 8 to 10 minute devotional video that we'd send out every Friday night. And I saw it as like this really important kind of touch point. I could give a couple of updates about where we were. You know, you'll remember it was like 2 weeks to flatten the curve or whatever it was. Like that we were only supposed to be in the pandemic for a few weeks, maybe a month, right? And so I thought, okay, I'll make 4 or 5 videos. I'll send it out. Like folks will see them. We'll give them updates. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, I was still making these videos, right? Which kind of is part of what started me back into the kind of the mode of getting in front of the camera. And so there was a time where I was kind of doing both, where I was a pastor creating these devotional YouTube videos for my congregation, which kind of helped to kind of start me back. And my TikTok thing was like completely separate from all of that. But I tell people this, I do think that it's similar. It's a similar vibe, right? Like you stand up on a stage.
Yeah.
And you deliver a prepared message.
Yes.
You're making the case for something. You're using the primary source of the Bible. And hopefully you're bringing in illustrations and imagery. And you're hopefully weaving it together in a way where it connects for people. Preaching is helpful for content creation in that as a preacher, you have to learn how to communicate in a way where you're talking to 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 people, right? Like you're talking to all these different people with all their different views on life, but you're trying to kind of mind meld, right? You're trying to get everybody to kind of think in the same way to understand what you're saying, and they can apply it to their lives in different ways. And so you learn storytelling to the masses. You learn what works from a messaging perspective to talk to a bunch of people at once.
You're going to have all the pastors switching out to content creation.
They're all like, wait, I do know.
I can be an influencer too.
I am an influencer. No, but it's similar, right? Like for as long as I've been preaching, I've been taking the stories from the Bible or from my life and crafting them, shaping them, packaging them in a way where as many people as possible can gain something from it. That's what I do as a content creator. I take the stories from history or the stories from our current political moment, and I try to package them in a way where folks can understand and apply it that hopefully leads to some type of action. Maybe in the pulpit, that action is giving your life to Christ or getting baptized, but
evoking
maybe
some kind of emotion.
Exactly. Maybe in the more secular or political world, it's like community organizing or going out to vote or undoing a way that you've been thinking about the people around you, relating across difference. And so there are similarities, honestly. I am not telling people to go be influencers.
Well, no, and I always say that you shouldn't aspire to be an influencer. It is something that I feel like it should just happen.
Right.
I didn't aspire to be an influencer. Would you say you aspired to be an influencer? It is interesting, though, because I have met people who that is their goal. They just want to be an influencer. They just want a PR package. They just want a free meal in exchange for. And so there isn't really any motion or behind it. And there's no motion or no message behind it at the end of the day. So
yeah, I mean, and I think we hear these things all the time, but like that idea, Simon Sinek, start with why, right? Like, what is the motivation for why you're doing what you're doing? It's incredibly important, and it feels maybe like trite. It feels like kind of like everyone's saying it, but it is very important. And I think coming back to something you brought up earlier about the criticisms that you receive online and the haters, like if you don't have a why, that stuff is going to, really knock you off of your goal.
No, I agree. And it can deter you. Or if you don't have a why and the algorithm starts bothering you, then you're immediately like, well, I guess this isn't for me. Or you're just having a whole mental health crisis over not getting likes and comments and views. And so this is season 3 of The Sweet House, and it has been a slow growth for The Sweet House, but I'm still at it because I'm here to tell people stories. And I'm just grateful that people have been willing to share their stories. And it's a different avenue for me. I think majority, because I explored YouTube, but not to the degree that I am doing it now. And so I'm pretty much starting from scratch and going from there.
Yeah.
And I had actually recorded this show 3 times before I found Cast Collective. And then the professionals ran with it. And then the professionals came to sit in the seat because they believed in what I was doing, because I had the longevity of proving that I can do this. I've been doing this kind of content just in a different way. So I think like we said, the commitment to it and just that gets people in tune with your cause. And so you have to have that. Otherwise you will just dwindle away.
Yeah.
Or mix into the crowd.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I want to say that I appreciate what you're doing with this show.
Thank you.
Whenever I want to like learn something about, especially like a local person, honestly, I know that you're one of the first stops I'm going to make. When I wanted to hear more about Freddie O'Connell, I listened to your episode. Joshua Black, I listened to your episode.
Josh Black, that was a great one.
It was a great one. And so you have so many of those episodes where like some of my kind of like, I don't want to say research, because I'm not stalking these people, but I want to know more about them.
Yeah.
And you've had...
But there's also no avenue that's telling people about them.
Exactly. And you're having these smart and in-depth conversations with those people where who they are is actually coming through. So
for sure, because Josh isn't able to deliver that in a comedy show. So they don't see the side of him where he's talking about dreams, or where he's talking about how his family doesn't support him in certain instances, or even Freddie O'Connell, his journey from going from corporate into being a politician. Like, no one sees that side. All we see is him saying, this is what we're going to do for the city of Nashville.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to sit down with him and talk about how he transitioned from being somebody who's worked in tech, and then now he is the mayor of Nashville.
Crazy.
And that was a really cool experience, having Freddie come in, because he came in with all his security and everything. Cool. And so I just didn't think that on a mayoral level. I know. I was like, oh, wow, this is like a situation. So I was like, maybe I should have let Cast Collective know that the Secret Service was coming with him. But that was pretty funny. Speaking of politics, you have been to both the RNC recently and also the DNC. Yeah. So if you could highlight one thing from each, what would it be?
Oh my goodness.
I know lots happened.
Yes, there's so many things I'll start with the most recent, which was the DNC. Michelle Obama spoke. Did you see it?
I did not get to see it, but it is on my list to go back and watch. Okay. I was actually at an influencer event that night, and my husband was texting me snippets of it the entire time.
Let me tell you,
I heard she was Beyonce.
She was better than Beyonce. Is that blasphemy?
Well, no, but just in terms of the spotlight and just her star power.
She was incredible. She was incredible. I was obviously in the room.
Should she run for president?
I don't think she should run. I actually think her power is bigger and better than what she would have to go through in politics. Let politicians be politicians, but she is someone worth aspiring to, right? Like you kind of want to be like her, and it's for sure completely okay, right?
Have you read her books?
I've read most of Becoming.
Okay.
I didn't finish it, but I read a significant portion of it. She's amazing.
She is. She makes you want to be like her, but the way that she speaks about her parents, which is just an anomaly as far as Black families, to be able to have that kind of dynamic, till they left this earth.
Yeah.
I think she had a very unique relationship with them to where they walked her through their lives while they were raising her, which in turn created a phenomenon. She and her brother they're phenomenal.
Two highly accomplished, brilliant, classy people. And I mean, to that point about her parents, one of the things that stood out to me was that she talked about her mom when she first stood up. She talked about how it was difficult. She almost did not give the speech because she was still mourning the loss of her mother. And I lost my dad in 2021. And so there was this kind of, for me, there was this politics of grief present at the DNC, like the things that we're mourning and what we do with that grief and that emotion and what we're hoping to build for the future as a country, right? That I thought was really present and powerful. She tied this kind of idea together of like losing her mom and mourning for her mom, but she also tied that to Vice President Kamala Harris's mom, who says, you know, when you see something wrong in the world, you've got to do something about it. And so you have this kind of like, it was really powerful is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, there's this really incredible kind of mountaintop moment for both of these women. But having to navigate that without a parent who is near and dear to them, it resonated with me as a person who, you know, I felt I've accomplished some things that I'm really, really proud of. And not having my dad here to see it has been difficult in its own way. But I thought that humanness of it all it really stood out to me. I
resonate with that.
Yeah.
My dad passed in 2016.
Okay.
6 months before we got married.
Wow.
And so I just think of all of the things that I too have accomplished, whether it's in my personal or my professional life.
That's
and
right.
I'm like, I wish he was here, but I also feel that he has been here with me through all of it. And I don't know if you feel that supernatural power with you.
But I say often that I see my dad often when I look in the mirror. I'll look at myself and I'll see my father, especially as I get older. I'm like, man, I look like that dude. That's crazy, right? And I do feel like he instills so much inside of me that I carry with me every day, that I do feel like he's very present with me every day.
Do you feel, my dad was an entrepreneur. He owned a construction company. He also was a music promoter.
My dad too. Not the music part, but
Look, who knew? Who knew this? I know.
Besties, what's up?
And what's so crazy is just the same way Michelle Obama speaks about her dad and her mom throughout her books, I definitely feel like I have that same experience of my parents. Like we went with my dad when he was rebuilding churches that had been burnt down in West Tennessee. We went with him. I even told Freddie O'Connell, like we were in his big truck when he would come up here to Nashville to work on the law offices downtown. So we were with him. I've seen him do these things. So there's nothing that I'm not capable of. If I'm going to build this show, I know that I have it in me because I was with him through his experience and he shared that. And I feel like as parents, because I'm also a mother, Rain gets to see every part of that from me. She gets to see me work on all these cool projects. I brought her to the studio last year and let her sit on the couch and play with the mic and just all of that. And I feel like it's so important for us to include our children in this because they will grow up to be phenomenal people who will change the world, like all of their moms said during their speeches. So I can't wait to go back and watch Michelle Obama's speech.
Okay, so go back and watch Michelle Obama's speech. That was a huge highlight for me and felt really meaningful. In the room, everyone was standing on their feet the entire time. Like everyone stood up when she came out. No one sat down until she left the stage. Barack Obama comes out and everybody's like, yes, Barack, we love him. President. That's my,
our forever president.
But then we all sat down.
So,
and listen.
I wonder what Sasha and Malia think.
I know.
Were they there?
I didn't see them there. I'm not sure if they were there.
I wonder if they think their parents are really as cool as everybody else thinks they are.
Surely they have to know. I think I got a greater appreciation for my parents as I got older.
Yeah.
And so they're 20 something something now. I'm sure they're starting to kind of really get an appreciation for it.
And think like, wow, like look at my parents, especially like little girls and their mom. It's something else. Everything I do, Rain wants to do. So what about the RNC?
I spent a week there talking to Black Republicans. So like a lot of what, I've covered this year, I've heard so many people talking about Black Republicans, but I really wanted to talk to Black Republicans. And so I was a little surprised by the number of Black Republicans that I saw at the RNC and got to talk to them and get to know them and spend some time with them. There are a lot of ideas. And for me, I really wanted to take Black political power seriously wherever I found it. And the RNC is a place where you can find some of that Black political power. And so that was the kind of a highlight for me, was being able to spend a week talking to Black Republicans. And I learned a lot in the process. I made an entire video about it.
I watched the video.
What did you think?
It's mind blowing. And I guess it's mind blowing to me if they're not in a certain economic class. I just can't justify why you would think the principles are in line with your life.
Right.
So I have a hard time with it, to be honest. I have a hard time understanding it.
Sure.
I know some.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And honestly, I think the past 2 election cycles have proved that a lot of people we think we know are voting completely different than maybe what they talk about.
Yeah.
So, or what they stand for.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, I don't think that they don't choose a candidate that checks all the boxes. They choose a candidate that checks a couple of boxes for them. And so I do have some grace for them because of that, I guess. But it is mind blowing still. It's mind blowing as a woman too, not just for Black people or other ethnicities. It's also mind blowing as a woman to know that reproductive rights are up for discussion, because that's not up for discussion for me.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And it's not up for discussion for Rain. We will move to the Caribbean.
Right.
So it's just not. I don't understand how it is even on the table for women. So I just can't identify with it. So honestly, it's mind blowing. I don't know another word for it.
I hear you. I hear that. A few things they said, some of which made it into the video and much of it didn't. Shocking to me. There are things that they said that I found to be.
Did you gather that they had historical context? Had they, again, that's why I think it's so important that we're talking to our children. Like, my mom has photos of my ancestors for probably the past 5 or 6 generations.
Wow.
My grandmother also had slave bills. We were aware. No one in my family is walking around here without the understanding of where we came from, how we got here.
Wow.
And so, every MLK Day, we were in Memphis doing the MLK March. My parents were taking us to TSU's homecoming, the Southern Heritage Classic in Memphis. They made sure that we knew where we came from. And so I'm just wondering if there is a lack of historical knowledge or just ancestral intelligence, or...
I love that term. I've never heard that before. Ancestral intelligence.
I don't understand how you can come to these consensus without there has to be something there.
I agree with you.
There has to be something there. And so there is a disconnect at some point.
There's a disconnect. There's a disconnect for sure. I think for many of the people I talked to, there was this real focus on rugged individualism, this kind of like, I've got to do it for me. But that's never been the way that Black people have moved forward. We have always both been oppressed and excelled and gained rights through collective action. We've been oppressed collectively, and we've been, emancipated collectively.
And my question would have been, and what makes you different?
Right. Yeah. It's a good question. And I think it's worth asking. I've asked that exact question, like, how is it that in the civil rights movement, or before that during Reconstruction, or before that during the push for emancipation, Black people had to work together in order to achieve liberation? And now it's all on you as an individual, and you got to do your thing and I got to do my thing, and the two shall not come together. And that's the way we move forward. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you just go one kind of layer down, it's like, wait, it all kind of falls apart. And much of it was built on that kind of foundation. And so, I challenged some of those kind of ideas in the video. I challenged those ideas to the people that I spoke to their face. And at the same time, I also conclude that there are certain things that we talked earlier about growing up in conservative Christian kind of homes. I understand some of the conservatism that people have. I might not agree with it, but I'm also going to recognize that like everyone doesn't have to agree with me, and I don't expect everyone to. So there's certain things I'm just going to kind of like let you have your belief on that. And so I imagine that there is a world where there is a conservative party or political organization that isn't built on the foundation of oppression and exclusion. And if that world or that party existed, I could imagine our politics would be much better as a country. Like if you just thought that like we need to spend less as a government and we want smaller, government or whatever it is, like I'm not going to condemn you for having that idea or that thought, even though I consider myself more of a progressive person. Conservatism is not something that I'm just going to throw out entirely, right? But when those ideas are almost predicated upon the oppression of women or the exclusion of queer people or racism against Black people or immigrants, it poisons the ideas in a way that I think is destructive and perhaps, in my opinion, untenable.
So then my question also is there, does conservatism exist on its own versus politics? Because I feel like the statement is, well, I just don't want to get political. Whenever you start talking to some of your friends who may want to say that they're more conservative, but they're not conservative per se.
Yeah. Well, I think everything.
Or their lifestyles don't exist, in my opinion, under a more conservative.
Right.
Right. So
right.
I don't know what separated these two parties into being the far left liberals and the conservatives. Because to me, there are a lot of conservatives who ride the fence and then a lot of liberals who also ride the fence. So why did they get separated into these two parties that you either have to ride this way or you got to ride that way? And I guess if I'm going to be a barometer, I'm riding this way versus the other way. It's almost like Christianity. If we're going to go there,
right.
Better safe than sorry.
Right. Right. No, I hear you. There's so much history to dig into around the ways our political system came to look the way that it looks today. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot. And we could probably spend a lot more time on that one day. What I will say is that I think we are all deeply political. We are all practicing politics, whether we like to admit it or not. You don't have an option. Like the roads that you drive on were publicly funded. The car that you're driving was probably subsidized by some government somewhere to attract the business to that state or to that country.
Yes.
And so at the end of the day, everything is of and related to politics. When we post
whatever on social media, if it is an ad, the FTC is controlling the regulations around
Precisely.
that. So when people say they don't want to be a part of politics, you are politics.
You already are. Yeah. They say if you don't have a seat at the table, you're what's on the menu. That's American politics. That's global politics. And I think it's important for people, I know we probably won't go much further on this, but it's important for people to get informed, take time to read, find a podcast that keeps you up to date every day or a YouTube channel that you can watch once a week to stay up to date on what's happening.
I think that's intimidating for people.
Yeah.
And which is why I love what you do, because you creating these videos allows the average person to be able to digest them. But when you tell people to read books, I actually read, I don't know if it was true, I read something on social media that said 50% of Americans can't read past the 5th grade level.
Yeah.
Have you heard this?
I haven't heard that, but I believe it. I actually think the work that we do, that I do as a journalist, content creator, I actually think the kind of superpower is reading comprehension. And that might sound insulting, but I think the ability to read, comprehend, and then interpret is the work of a public communicator.
Yeah, and communicate it back out to the masses, for sure. And so I think it's necessary to reevaluate who we're following on social media.
Yeah, it's important. Don't get your news from the shade room. I'll say that much.
I like the shade room. And it's funny you say that because one night I was in bed and Alex was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm catching up on the news of the day from the shade room."
Oh my God. No.
So don't get your news from the shade room. Be careful with who you're following on social media. And then also, I think, have difficult conversations. I have a friend, I was just at her house trying on clothes, and somehow we got on the subject of racism. She's a white friend, and we've been friends since we were like 5 years old. She is Republican. She's not conservative. And that's why I said, how do the two coexist? And I also studied politics and worked on the Hill and know all of this too. But I'm just trying to break it down for the people. So she says to me, "Jasmine, who's racist in 2023? I said, "A lot of people." But her experience does not share that.
Sure.
And so she has to have those conversations with me. I have to have those conversations with her and not be afraid to have those conversations.
Sure.
I mean, we've even had those conversations in the studio with Aaron and Sean.
Sure.
Being that they are also from Memphis, which is a more diverse area. And so we've just talked about our experiences as young people and how those shaped us, and then even what we're doing now. So yeah, I think having the difficult conversations are more powerful to me than 60-second news segments and all of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of the kind of idea of like who's racist today comes from a really shallow understanding of what racism is and what it means to be racist and to perpetuate racist ideas. And, you know, I can't give you that in just like, you know, a few seconds. I can hopefully start you on the journey, right? Yeah. And maybe ask some interesting and probing questions, right? Like how did white people become white people?
Which is another video that he has, which is really interesting, you guys.
Exactly.
They weren't known as white people.
Exactly, right? Like how did this ethnic identity, this kind of trans-European identity come to be formed, right? And I can start you on that journey and recommend the book by Nell Irvin Painter, The History of White People, or others, right? Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And we can kind of have a deeper, more meaningful conversation about race and racism. And I think that could help us understand how in 2024, we're still dealing with the very same outcomes that we saw in the late 60s or 70s around economic mobility or job mobility, or, you know, like hireability. We're still seeing those same things. In 1974, I want to say it was about 4% of Black people were in medical school. Today, it's about 4% of Black people in medical school, right? Like
I worked at Meharry Medical College. I know.
Yeah. And so we think like we've made so much progress, but have we?
Yeah.
Sure, we have. Like, let me say yes.
I had this conversation with my cousin this weekend. He's actually pretty high up at CVS, and he's been in corporate for years. And so he's in his 50s, and we were talking about the barriers to entry for young Black people trying to break into corporate because it's not easy. And he has a daughter who just graduated from college, and she was talking about how all of her friends are having a hard time breaking into corporate. So Chuck, my older cousin, he's like, well, I don't know what's going on because I thought I had it hard. And I said to him, no, I think you had it much easier. Honestly, I think you fought for it. Don't get me wrong. But he came out of Morehouse, went and got an MBA, and I think the doors were a bit more open to having an esteemed Black person step into corporate America then than now. It's an interesting dynamic to explore. So those percentages being the same decades apart, I am not surprised.
And it's important to say that like we're living in a time where the very idea of equity or an inclusion or intentional like kind of an awareness of diversity is being politicized and demonized, and that is significant, and it's making life for women and queer people and Black people and Latino people and beyond. It's making life harder for folks. And so it's important for us to say that. And this isn't to condemn any one person or to say all white people are bad, which is what I think triggers. But I do think it's important to say that, like, we have work to do, and it takes everyone being involved for that work to get done.
Well, and I also appreciate you doing the research with going to the RNC and talking to Black Republicans, because it is not a campaign to demonize white people. It is a campaign to understand all people so that we can collectively move forward with some ideology, whether we are on the same page or not, some respective ideology.
That's right.
And so I appreciate the work that you're doing, from your visual storytelling to actually sitting down and talking with people who don't agree with you. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Good.
We need more content creators like you, though.
No, I appreciate that.
We really do. I feel like social media, in a sense, is under attack. And I think that it's under attack as far as like the saturation of just 7-second content, brief stuff that's not thought out. It's not articulated well. I think we need to have more thought pieces. There needs to be more truth in social media. I actually pitched that for a TED Talk, but we'll talk about that another day.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. I do want to talk about your Forgotten Black History series and how it's had like such a profound impact. So what feedback have you received in regards to it?
Yeah.
Has it been good feedback overall, or?
Overall, good feedback.
Because in the state of Tennessee, I believe, didn't the governor roll back teaching Black history in?
Yeah, I know that there have been multiple efforts, and it's almost hard to keep up with because they span across school districts and counties and states. And so it's almost difficult I know that there is an overarching effort to diminish the teaching of Black history specifically. I mean, is it
the school's job to teach it, or is it the parents and the family's job to teach it?
I actually think it's the school's job to teach it. I think schools should be teaching a more balanced history. The interesting thing about it is that we're getting into it now, but one of the privileges of whiteness is that your history isn't called white history. It's just called history. And so when you're talking about history, we should ask ourselves, should schools be teaching history? Well, what does that mean? Right? I think people automatically say, yeah, of course, duh. But then you ask the question, should schools be teaching Black history? Well, Black history is just history, right? It just is history. And if we had a more fulsome or more, complete telling or teaching of history, I think it would integrate all kinds of people. I mean, one of the things we don't talk enough about are the Native American histories. There were over 600, we're in Nashville, there were over 600,000 people, Native people. This was a bustling Native American city, a couple thousand years ago, right? In the 1300s, I believe specifically. There are hundreds of years ago. So there are all these Native American people who lived here. What happened to those people, right? This was one of the biggest cities in the world for Native Americans. And we don't learn that history. We don't know that truth. And so I say that to say that it's important that history be taught in a much more full and complete way, because we are literally beginning the process of repeating certain parts of our history precisely because we did not learn it or value it or place it in the proper context. And so I say all of that to say that, yes, absolutely, schools should be teaching it. But there are things that will always be missing from the curriculum. And so it's important for parents to also do the work of teaching their kids. One of the things that I got an email from a parent who said that she screenshots my videos, the ones where I talk about that life. These are kind of like these defiant Black history figures. And she screenshots the videos and prints them out to make flashcards for her kids to learn these historical facts. And it's really
the figures. Yeah.
It's really kind of cool. Yeah. And I think that it's a real honor that she does that with my videos. But I think the idea goes beyond anything that I'm doing. It's just that at home, parents should absolutely be kind of doing a little additional work to make sure their kids know the very things that your parents did, right? To take you to TSU and to the MLK Day March. And like all of that is so important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Speaking of historical figures, I think when we think of that context, we think of MLK, we think of Muhammad Ali, we think of just certain people of that time era who Representative John Lewis. But then in today's time, I don't think we recognize historical figures in that same light. Now it's like, especially with social media, I think it's like, well, now everybody has the opportunity to be these celebrities that these people were. I mean, everybody loves to say that their granddad or whoever marched with Martin Luther King, even if he didn't. And so I'm thinking about it in today's time. If we tell our Black history to our grandchildren, who will be the John Lewis of our time? Who will be Martin Luther King of our time? Who will be those people? Have you ever thought about that?
I do.
And do you consider yourself one of those people?
Now, if I were to be amongst those people, that would be the honor of my life. I do not consider myself that today, but if history looks on me that way, then I would be very, very honored. That said, I think about Allison Also Brooks. I think about, obviously, Vice President Kamala Harris as just this trailblazing figure. Wes Moore comes to mind, governor of Maryland. There are plenty of people on the ground. Representative Ruwan down in Georgia. She's a Palestinian woman who is doing incredible things. I mean, I can keep going, but I think there are organizations that are doing incredible work to make sure that those who are living with, previously incarcerated people are able to get their voting rights back. I'm thinking about William Barber from the Poor People's Campaign comes to mind as someone who I think we'll look back on. There are a number. I actually think, like, even beyond that, I think we'll look back at Kendrick Lamar as a figure who was really, really influential and instrumental. I certainly wouldn't say like he's like MLK or anything, but his love for the culture and the voice that he kind of leveraged at this time is powerful.
But will the next generation not say he was MLK? Because from what I understand, MLK's generation, while they epitomized him, did not appreciate his celebrity in the same way we have lifted him.
It's fair. He was, at the time of his assassination, he was the most hated man in America.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very fair.
So I just wonder when I think about the generations to come.
But we have to admit that like MLK was instrumental in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he was in the Fair Housing Act of 68 or 65 and a number of other things. He was
obviously like an incredible figure.
Like he helped to lead us into a new Reconstruction era of America, and it's very important. But writers, let me name a couple. Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing some incredible, incisive stuff. Dante Stewart is a great writer who is doing some incredible work. I mentioned Isabel Wilkerson earlier. Her book Warmth of Other Suns and then her book Cast have been incredible. Nicole Hannah-Jones from the 1619 Project.
1619 Project was an excellent one.
Amazing. And Imani Perry. Anyway, I can keep going. Some incredible folks out there.
Incredible names that you all should go look up for sure. Did you read Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me?
I did.
Did you see the documentary, or was it a documentary / movie?
I didn't see it. Now I should have. It's like right up my alley. I should have, but I did not watch it. I loved the book so much that I was like hesitant to put anything else from that universe in my mind because
they did a good job with it.
Did they do a good job?
Yeah, a good job at the. Well, he's just such a vivid writer, so that you can, like you said, it's a talent to be able to hone digestible information and be able to disseminate it to people. That's a talent, and get them to visually walk with you through it. So he's just, I mean, you read his stuff and you're like, you feel like you're there.
To give a preview for someone who hasn't, the book Between the World and Me is a letter written to his son. So it's a black man.
Again, he's talking to his son about his life. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's telling his son what it means to be a man, to be a black man specifically. He's writing this kind of coming of age letter to his son. And it is such a great insight. There's so many parts where I was like gutted and I deeply resonated with Coates' vision of this country and what he wants for his son. And so if you want to get into the mind of a black man, a black person more broadly, I think that is a phenomenal place to start. He kind of is the James Baldwin of our time. I know he likely hates that comparison. But
have you ever met him?
Okay, so I met him very briefly, but I won't even tell the story. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best meeting. It wasn't under the best circumstances. We were kind of like going in different directions, and so very briefly. But I admire him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you've done your research, and you are someone who clearly is well read, and but I also want people who are watching this to know that there are other ways to get your information to you. I actually was watching this video of an influencer on Instagram, and he said, text somebody today and tell them, I need to talk to you about something. And that commits you to having a difficult conversation that you wouldn't typically have. And so as we go into this, well, we're already in the heat of this election season. We have a couple more months. I think it's so valuable to have difficult conversations. And so maybe text somebody today, like he said, and have one of those conversations. Just pick a point. It can be reproductive health. It can be history, white history, black history, Indian history, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It can be any of that. But I think people have to start somewhere. Yeah. And I think when we tell people to read books,
right,
it is just highly intimidating and
Agreed.
just off-putting for them.
Agreed.
They'd rather watch reality TV, which is scripted and all of the above. So, yeah, I feel like our generation, especially as content creators who are creating thought-provoking content, have to let people know all the ways that they can digest the content. Let's have some fun.
All right.
I want to ask you some fun questions since you've been in the hot seat.
All right.
And we've had some very thoughtful conversations today.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We have. It's been great.
So given your deep dive into history, if you could have a dinner party with any 3 historical figures, who would they be and why?
Goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Let's say Ida B. Wells.
Okay.
Phenomenal journalist, Black history figure. Tennessee's very own. I'm not sure if she claimed Tennessee, but I think she has enough connections here that Tennessee can claim her. Can I give a little bit of reason for each one?
Sure.
All right. This is my jam. I love Ida B. Wells. As a journalist, she was not beholden to this idea of objectivity. She had a perspective.
Yeah.
She had a voice, right? She was approaching the stories from a very specific place. She chronicled and wrote about the lynchings of Black people across the South. And so as she traveled across the South, she wrote this thing called Southern Horrors, right? Like this isn't a neutral, this isn't a New York Times headline. Some people may have been lynched across the South. No, she's saying there are horrors taking place in the South. Powerful. I love to pick her brain on what it means to be a journalist as a Black person. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. Charles Hamilton Houston comes to mind.
I don't know
He
him.
was an early NAACP. He was the dean of Howard's law school, helped to found it. He was basically in the military, I believe, during World War I, experienced discrimination and all kinds of things, decided, you know what, I'm going to go to law school. When I get out of the military, I'm going to law school and I'm going to come tear down this system. So he goes to Harvard, graduates top of his class, and is the architect of the legal approach to the civil rights movement. He finds cases. His whole deal is I'm going to find these cases across the country that we can then bring up lawsuits that will help to kind of undermine or dismantle segregation. And so he is incredibly important, but also not very well known. And so Charles Hamilton Houston, I'd love to pick his brain about the strategic approach to progress, right? How do you engineer progress for our community? And then the last person would have to be my dad's mom, who passed away the year before I was born. And I heard that she was the best cook to ever live. I heard that
she's cooking the dinner.
She's cooking dinner. That's unfair, isn't it? Hey, grandma, can you cook dinner for us? I'm going to be talking to these really interesting. No, but I would love to. Apparently she was very funny and loving and thoughtful. And I never met her. And I would love to have met her and sat down with her. So she comes to mind.
You know, that's wild because I also never met my dad's mom. And I was told that I am the epitome of her. I act like her and everything. So when I had my daughter, I named her after my grandmother that I never met.
Wow.
So yeah, I feel like we were meant to have this conversation. We were meant to connect.
Awesome.
We have so many cool correlations.
That's cool.
As a Nashville resident, what's your favorite hidden gem in the city?
Oh my goodness. I am not the one to ask about this. I go to like the same 3-4 spots.
What are a couple of those spots?
I mean,
Have you been to the National Museum of African American Music?
Of course.
Do you love it?
I'm a member. I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Have you been to the Tennessee State Museum?
I have.
Okay.
That one's connected to the library.
Yeah.
I've been to the library multiple times. I love the library.
Okay.
I've walked around the museum a little bit, but I don't think I've done.
Are there normal books in that library or is it just historical books?
I think when I go, I'm going for the historical books and like the records and like that kind of thing. So like I haven't spent nearly enough time. If there are normal books, I haven't spent time with them. And if there is a museum, I have not really explored the museum. I've mostly been there to dig through records. So I love that. I just went to the farmer's market this past weekend.
Farmer's market is great.
It's great. It's not hidden at all.
No.
Everyone knows about it.
Well, no, I don't think people know they can go there and just take their families or just have a date night. Like, I mean, even the Nashville Black Market has events there.
Yes.
And yeah,
Love
I mean,
the
there's
Nashville
live
Black
music.
Market.
Yeah. Jamaica Way's there.
Jamaica Way, shout out.
You can get any kind of food there.
Really good.
Yeah.
I do love this place called Deg Thai. It's on the south side.
Yeah.
It's a Thai spot that's really, really good.
On the south side of Nashville?
South side of Nashville, down
I hadn't heard of
Nolensville.
it. Yeah.
Really, really good. In what I've been calling, I'm going to say this, I've been calling that like the international corridor. I want them to kind of like name it that because we should be driving traffic to all of the incredibly diverse number of businesses and restaurants down Nolensville Pike on the south side of Nashville. It's like, it's so much incredible food down there.
Yeah.
And then let me think, Butcher and Bee, have you been?
Yes, Butcher and Bee is
So
really good.
good.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
an East
good.
Nashville staple.
It's the staple.
So you've amassed a huge TikTok following. What's one TikTok trend or challenge you secretly enjoy but haven't participated in yet?
Oh my goodness, this is such a specific.
Yes.
I have not.
So-
Okay, I have an answer to this. I've not participated in the like blind ranking,
Okay.
but I love it.
Okay.
I love a good blind rank. People just yap and talk about like blind ranking, like top male R&B artists or top soda, like best sodas. You have to rank it 1 to 10. And they like put up a random soda. And so you're like Sprite. Okay, that's 1, or Coke. That's 2.
I ranked a dessert one, and Alex is like, I think you did that all wrong. I think it was like number 1 being the best, and like number 2. So I like did it all wrong.
Oh, did
so
you?
I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stay away from those. So
I love those.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm gonna go find some more and get into them.
Okay, good.
Between creating serious, thought-provoking content, what's your guilty pleasure for unwinding and just having a bit of fun and not thinking about how to save the world or give messages that are helpful to people?
Very guilty pleasure. Love is Blind. Love some Love is Blind.
Ooh.
My wife and I will sit down and watch like mad episodes. Pop the Balloon, Find Love on YouTube.
Okay.
Love the show, but only the Arlette Amuli version, not all the knockoffs. But I love that show. It's so funny.
Okay, I haven't watched that one, but I have seen a video of Pop the Balloon on Instagram where somebody was doing like a knockoff of it.
Yeah. The knockoffs are not good.
I do love Love is Blind, but my husband will no longer watch dating shows with me because he is just convinced that they're all staged and just like, he's like, they're hiring actors for this stuff. He's just like, none of this is real. So
I don't disagree with him.
Okay.
I do think a lot of it is fake. They say I love you way too fast. Okay, way too fast. In fact, I would almost like if I could do one thing that just is totally off brand from the content I make, I would like live react to Love is Blind and other dating shows. I love it. I love the commentary. I can be a little mean maybe, so maybe that's probably why I would never do it. But like, I do love watching.
I have some friends that have been on reality shows. I actually have the ladies of Married at First Sight Nashville on this upcoming season of The Sweet House. So they're episode 1. And so my perspective, well, some of the shows, Married at First Sight Nashville, well, Married at First Sight, period, is like, it's a full-on, fast-paced, they're making these people get married.
They are.
It is not acted out.
No, it's very real.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have them on the show, because they are reality stars now, and so they were very candid about the ins and outs of it. And just like how they didn't become these stars overnight that no longer have to work. They're all working, which I do love about these women. But I think a lot of times people can go on the show thinking that this is their ticket to,
no doubt,
this is their meal ticket.
Yeah, you think you're going to get like, a couple 100,000 followers and like brand deals and you'll live like the life. It might not be that way.
Speaking of brand deals, because you make content that is informative.
Yeah.
Do you work with brands at all?
I do. Yeah.
And do you find that they are supportive of the content that you're making?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I work with a number of studios, especially around documentaries and movies.
Yeah.
That's kind of an easy in.
Yeah.
Books occasionally, but a lot of issue oriented things as well. Yeah. I have some
awesome
some partners.
Can you tell us about your Webby win? And first of all, tell them what a Webby is.
Yes.
And then tell them about your Webby win. And then didn't you also get nominated by the NAACP for something?
I have not received an NAACP nomination.
I thought you did for some reason.
Yet.
Yes.
But
see, I'm speaking it into fruition.
When it happens, you're the first person I'm calling. Like,
all right.
Jasmine, it happened. Yeah, so the Webbies are like the Oscars of the internet. Mm-hmm. And so they're the kind of highest award that you can receive as a creator on the internet. Mm-hmm. And it's not just content creators or influencers. There are also ad agencies and other, filmmakers who post their stuff online. If it's internet driven, web driven, you can win a Webby. And I won Best Creator on social, which is crazy. And such a high honor that I was chosen by a panel of judges and some people who I really, Marion Croak and Law Roach and others who are on the panel. And so it's really, really such an honor. I went to the Webbies this year and Julia Louis-Dreyfus was there and Shannon Sharp and Keke Palmer and Amber Ruffin were all honored as well. And so it was really cool. It was a really, really cool experience. I haven't received my trophy yet. And so this is a reminder that I need to get on that.
They need to send it to you.
They need to send it to me.
Yeah.
But honestly, incredible to be named. My name this is like a little fan moment, but my name is on the same page as Taylor Swift. And so I'm like, look at that. Like, that's some good company.
See, you are a historical figure of the time. You're already out here winning awards and you will be written into the history books, whatever the history is called, whether it is Black history or, everybody's history.
That's cool. Thank you.
I love the work that you're doing. And I'm very grateful that you came to sit down with the Sweet House because you're busy. So I appreciate you making the Sweet House your next stop after the RNC and the DNC. And so where are you going next after this?
That's a good question. I'll be at the Congressional Black Caucus weekend coming up soon. And
you want to know a fun fact?
Please.
I was an intern for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
What?
Yeah.
Look at all these connections. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I said I was going to go back to the CBC, the annual legislative conference one year. I just have not been back. Honestly, I kind of stepped away from politics.
Yeah.
And I have not been into the political world the past few years. I've been like, you know what? After that one election, I was just kind of like, I'm going to let y'all have it. I will be there to vote, but I'm not. There comes a point, and I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but trying to drill rationale is very hard and exhausting.
Yeah.
And so then you just need a break.
No, it's very legitimate. That is very, I can't imagine if you were really deep in the political world in 2015, 2016, like mid 20s, late 20s, whatever it is, like that is you get jaded quickly when the country does what it did electing Trump at that time. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild.
I bet.
Yeah, I think it's wild on a personal level because, again, you're having lots of difficult conversations. Yeah. And then in 2020, it's like an explosion of conversations and people want to understand, but then you have to decipher whether it's worth the energy to even explain it. And then now we're in the phase of the rollbacks. So there's that.
There's that.
And so, but we'll have to have like a whole nother episode. I would love to have you back.
I would love to do that.
And then we have to bring our spouses.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. They have a lot to say.
Yeah, they do. Alex actually has a podcast. He's got a sports podcast. So that's where he was last night when the frog appeared. That's a whole nother conversation. But you guys check out Garrison. He is continuously putting out awesome content that is educational, informative, well researched, and thought out. So if you're looking for somebody new to follow or be inspired by on social media, he is on TikTok. He's also on YouTube and also on Instagram. Are you anywhere else? Do you have a formal website? And
I don't have a website.
Are you doing any live speaking engagements? Anything like that?
I do some speaking engagements, but nothing upcoming that I'd be able to name. Yeah. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube are the main platforms. If you find me on one of those, you can click the link in the bio and you can find me on all of those.
Well, thank you for coming on. And you guys tune in to more episodes of The Sweet House.
Thanks for having me.